Catch her. Don't let her escape. She must pay for what she has done. In a lively town of Bamto, there lived a woman named Mama Bola. Mama Bola was the talk of the town, not because she was kind or generous, but because of the way she ran her food business. She was a large woman with thick arms and a round belly that jiggled as she moved. Her stall, located at the heart of the market, was always packed with customers, not because her food was the best, but because it was the cheapest. People all around the town came to eat at her stall, traders, workers, even school children who had a little money to spare. But there was something disturbing about Mama Bola's food. Many people whispered about it, but no one had proof. Some said her food tasted strange. Others claimed they had seen her doing things no food seller should do. The rumors only made people more curious, and some even dared to try the food just to see if the stories were true. The truth, however, was worse than anyone could imagine. Mama Bola had a dirty secret, one that would make anyone lose their appetite forever. Every morning before she started cooking, Mama Bola followed a strange routine. She would sit on a small stool in her backyard, lift her large arms, and carefully shave off her thick armpit hair with a rusty razor. She never threw the hair away. Instead, she mixed it into her food. To her, it was a special ingredient, one that gave her meals a unique taste. She believed it was the reason people kept coming back. She had done this for years, ever since she started her food business. At first, she had done it as a joke, laughing to herself as she sprinkled the hair into the soup. But when she noticed that people still ate the food without complaining, she continued. It became a habit, a part of her cooking process. She convinced herself that it was harmless. After all, no one had ever fallen sick from eating her meals. Her customers, unaware of the disgusting truth, enjoyed their meals, licking their fingers and praising her cooking. Some even brought their friends, telling them how special Mama Bola's food was. But the truth could not stay hidden forever. Sooner or later, someone was bound to discover her secret, and when they did, all hell would break loose. Tunda was a sharp-eyed boy who spent most of his afternoons running errands in the market for his mother. He was a small, skinny boy with a nose for trouble and a mind full of questions. Whenever he came to Mama Bola's stall to buy food for his mother, he noticed something odd. Her food always had tiny black strands in it, something that didn't look like normal spices. One day, as he sat on a bench near her stall eating his plate of rice, he found one of the strands in his food. He picked it up and held it close to his eyes. It didn't look like a vegetable, nor did it feel like a spice. It was coarse, curly, and very strange. His stomach turned, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he decided to investigate. The next morning, he snuck behind Mama Bola's stall, watching her from a small opening in the wooden fence. What he saw made his heart race. There she was, sitting on her stool, lifting her arm, and shaving thick strands of hair into a bowl. Then, without hesitation, she dumped the hair into her pot of steaming soup. Tunde covered his mouth to stop himself from shouting. He had discovered the truth. But what was he going to do about it? Tunde ran home in shock. He wanted to tell his mother, but he knew she wouldn't believe him. She always said he was too mischievous and had a habit of making up stories. If he told her that Mama Bola was mixing armpit hair into her food, she would probably laugh and send him away. So he decided to gather proof. The next morning, he returned to the market with a small notebook and a piece of charcoal. He hid behind the fence again and watched. Just like before, Mama Bola shaved her armpit hair and mixed it into the food. This time, he carefully wrote everything down in his notebook. He even picked up a few stray strands from the ground and wrapped them in a piece of cloth. Tunde knew he had to be careful. If Mama Bola caught him, he could get into serious trouble. But he couldn't keep quiet. People had to know the truth. He needed to come up with a plan, one that would expose Mama Bola and stop her from feeding people her disgusting meals. That evening, Tunda went to the house of his best friend Said. She was the only person who would believe him. Said was bold and clever, always ready for an adventure. When Tunde told her what he had seen, she gasped in horror. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her eyes wide. "I saw it with my own eyes," Tunde said, handing her the cloth with the wrapped-up hair. "This came from her food." Said wrinkled her nose as she unwrapped the cloth. "Oh, this is disgusting. We have to tell everyone." "But how?" Tunde asked. "If we just say it, people will think we're lying. We need to show them proof." Sade thought for a moment, then snapped her fingers. What if we catch her in the act? We can bring people to watch her while she cooks. Tunde nodded. It was a risky plan, but it was the only way. They decided to wait for the perfect moment. Mama Bola had been feeding people her secret ingredient for too long. It was time for her dirty secret to come to light. The next morning, Tunde and Saad arrived at the market early. They pretended to be playing near Mama Bola's stall, but in reality they were waiting for her to start cooking. As soon as she went to the back to begin her morning routine, Saad ran to call some of the traders nearby. "Come quickly," she shouted. "You won't believe what Mama Bola is doing." At first, the traders hesitated. They were busy with their own businesses, and some of them liked Mama Bola's cheap food. But Saad's insistence made them curious. Slowly, a small crowd gathered near the back of Mama Bola's stall, peeking through the gaps in the wooden fence. Mama Bola, unaware that she had an audience, continued her usual routine. She raised her large arm, scraped off the thick strands of hair, and let them fall into the pot. The traders watching gasped in horror. Some of them covered their mouths, others turned away in disgust. "What kind of wickedness is this?" one woman cried. "We have been eating this filth all these years." Mama Bola turned around, startled by the voices. When she saw the crowd staring at her in shock, she dropped the razor from her hand. She knew she had been caught. For a moment, there was complete silence. The traders, customers, and passers-by who had gathered around Mama Bola's stall were too shocked to speak. Then, like a wave crashing onto the shore, the voices erupted. "Ah, we have been eating armpit hair all this time?" One woman shrieked, her hands on her head. "This is why her food always tasted funny," another trader shouted, spitting onto the ground in disgust. "She is wicked. Mama Bola, you have been feeding us filth," a man bellowed, his face twisted with rage. Mama Bola's face turned pale. She tried to smile, to laugh it off as a joke, but the crowd was not in the mood for jokes. She took a step back, then another, her large body trembling. She could see the anger in their eyes, the betrayal, the disgust. Wait, let me explain," she stammered, lifting her hands. "It is not what you think." Tunde stepped forward, his small chest puffed out with pride. "We saw everything," he declared. "Every morning, you shave your armpits and mix the hair into the food. You have been doing it for years. We even found the hair in the food." He held up the piece of cloth with the strands of hair, and the crowd gasped again. The proof was right in front of them. There was no denying it now. Mama Bola could feel the fury in the air. People were picking up sticks, stones, anything they could find. She knew what was coming. If she didn't run now, she might not make it out alive. Without thinking twice, she turned and bolted. Her fat body wobbled as she ran, pushing past baskets of vegetables, knocking over wooden tables. People chased after her, shouting and cursing. "Catch her! Don't let her escape. She must pay for what she has done." Mama Bola's heart pounded as she ran through the narrow paths of the market, dodging traders and carts. Sweat poured down her face, but she didn't stop. She ran and ran, past the stalls, past the shops, past the curious onlookers. But no matter how fast she ran, the angry crowd was right behind her. She had no idea where she was going. She just needed to get away. After what felt like hours, Mama Bola finally found a place to hide. She ducked into a small abandoned shed near the river, gasping for breath. Her body ached, her legs felt like jelly. She could still hear the distant shouts of the crowd searching for her. She sat down on the dusty floor, her mind racing. How had everything gone so wrong? She had been selling food for years and no one had ever caught her. Why now? Why today? And how had that little boy, Tunde, ruined everything? Tears streamed down her face as she rocked back and forth. She had thought her secret ingredient was harmless. She had even believed it was what made her food taste good. But now she saw the truth. She had been feeding people filth. She had betrayed their trust, and now she was paying the price. She had to think. What could she do? She couldn't go back to the market. Everyone wanted her punished. She had to come up with a plan, and fast. Meanwhile, back at the market, the traders were still in shock. No one wanted to believe that they had been eating food mixed with armpit hair for years. Some were furious, others were sick to their stomachs. Many swore they would never eat from a roadside food seller again. Tunde and Sade stood at the center of it all, feeling both proud and nervous. They had done what was right, but they had also made a dangerous enemy. What do you think will happen to her? Said asked, looking around. I don't know, Tunde admitted. But one thing is certain. Mama Bola will never sell food here again. But Tunde was wrong. Mama Bola wasn't finished yet, and she wasn't going to disappear so easily. Far away in her hiding place, she wiped her tears and clenched her fists. If the market wouldn't take her back, she would find another way. And this time, she would make sure no one could ever expose her again. She would return. And when she did, she would be more dangerous than ever. Mama Bola sat in the abandoned shed, staring at the dirt floor. Her heart still pounded from the chase, but her mind was now focused on one thing: revenge. She had lost everything: her food stall, her customers, her reputation. And it was all because of that nosy little boy, Tunda. Her fists clenched as she thought about him. That boy had ruined her, embarrassed her in front of the entire market. And Said, too. They had worked together to expose her. She couldn't let them get away with it. She needed a plan, a way to teach them a lesson, a way to make them regret ever crossing her path. But how? She had no money, no place to go, and nowhere to cook her food. Then an idea crept into her mind, dark and dangerous. If I can't serve my food in the market, then I'll serve it another way, she muttered to herself. And this time, I will make sure they eat it. She let out a low chuckle. Yes, she would return, but not as a food seller. She would return as something else, something more dangerous. Days passed and the market slowly went back to normal. The traders whispered about Mama Bola, but no one knew where she had gone. Some believed she had run away forever, while others thought she might come back. Tunde and Sade became heroes. People praised them for exposing the truth. The market women gave them free fruits and snacks, and the older men patted them on the back. But even with all the praise, Tunde couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Mama Bola had disappeared too easily. No one had seen her. No one knew where she was. And that scared him. I don't think this is over, he told Said one afternoon as they sat near the well. You think she'll come back? Said asked, raising an eyebrow. I don't know, Tunde admitted. But I have a bad feeling. Said sighed. If she comes back, we'll deal with her again. She can't fool the market people anymore. Tunde nodded, but his stomach still felt uneasy. Something told him that Mama Bola wasn't done with them yet. A week later, something strange happened. A young girl, Amina, who sold oranges in the market, disappeared without a trace. Her mother cried and begged the traders for help, but no one knew where Amina had gone. She had been seen leaving the market in the evening, but after that, she was nowhere to be found. At first, people thought she had just wandered off, but then another person disappeared, a butcher's apprentice named Kola. The market became tense. People locked their stalls earlier than usual. Parents told their children not to stay out late. The whispers started again. Could it be kidnappers? Or something worse? No one knew the answer, but Tunde had a terrifying thought. What if Mama Bola was behind this? A few days later, a new food stall opened at the far end of the market. It was small, made of wood and old iron sheets. The smell of food drifted through the air, thick and spicy, drawing in hungry customers. The woman behind the stall was covered in a large scarf, her face mostly hidden. She moved slowly, serving food in wooden bowls, her voice raspy when she spoke. People were curious at first. Who is this new seller? They asked. Where did she come from? But curiosity was quickly replaced with hunger. The food was delicious, rich and flavorful. The customers ate greedily, licking their fingers and asking for more. Tund and Sad stood at a distance, watching. Something about the new stall made them uneasy. The woman's voice, her movements, the way she never looked anyone in the eyes. And then they saw something that made their blood run cold. As the woman reached out to serve food, her sleeve slipped back for just a second, revealing a familiar scarred arm. Mama Bola's arm. She was back, and she was feeding people again. Tundi grabbed Sadi's hand, his heart pounding in his chest. Did you see that? He whispered. Said nodded slowly, her face pale. It's her. Mama Bola is back. They both stood frozen, watching as the disguised woman continued to serve food to unsuspecting customers. She was careful, quiet, and different from before. No shouting, no laughing, just a silent, eerie presence as she dished out steaming bowls of food. "What do we do?" Sade asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Tunde's mind raced. If they ran into the market shouting that Mama Bola was back, no one would believe them. The people had already moved on from the scandal. And what if she had changed her ways? What if she wasn't doing anything bad anymore? But deep inside, Tunde didn't believe that. Mama Bola was up to something. He could feel it. "We need to find out what's inside that food," he finally said, "before it's too late." At first, everything seemed normal. People ate Mama Bola's food and praised its delicious taste. "Ah, this soup is so rich," one woman said, smacking her lips. "Better than all these expensive restaurants," another man agreed. But then, strange things started happening. A woman who ate at the stall complained of stomach pain that lasted for days. A young boy who had a plate of rice from Mama Bola's stall fainted in the middle of the road. More and more people started falling sick, but no one could explain why. The market was in confusion. "Is it a sickness going around?" some people asked. "Maybe the food in the market is bad," others guessed. But Tunde and Sade knew the truth. It had to be Mama Bola. Tunde and Sade decided to take a risk. "If we can get some of the food and check what's inside, we'll know the truth," Sade said. "But how do we do that?" Tunde asked. "She will recognize us if we go to buy it." Sade thought for a moment, then smiled. "We don't have to buy it. We just need to take it." That night, they waited until Mama Bola's stall was closed. They snuck behind the wooden structure, their hearts beating fast. The cooking pots were still there, some covered with old clothes. Sade reached out and slowly lifted the lid of a pot. The strong smell of pepper soup hit their noses. Inside, floating in the thick broth, were strange, dark pieces of meat. Tund felt his stomach turn. "What kind of meat is that?" Sade dipped a small wooden spoon into the soup and scooped up a piece. She held it close to the moonlight, and then they saw it. A human finger. Sade dropped the spoon, her breath coming in short gasps. "Tunde, is that—" Tunde clapped a hand over his mouth to stop himself from screaming. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Mama Bola wasn't just feeding people armpit hair anymore. She was feeding them human flesh. Suddenly, the disappearances in the market made sense. Amina, the orange seller. Kola, the butcher's apprentice. They hadn't run away. They had been taken. And they had been cooked. "We have to go," Tunde whispered, his whole body shaking. "We have to tell everyone." But as they turned to run, a dark shadow rose behind them. "You should not have come here," a deep voice growled. They spun around and came face to face with Mama Bola. Mama Bola's face twisted into a terrifying grin. Her scarf had fallen off, revealing her wild, unkempt hair and dark, piercing eyes. "You children," she hissed, "always poking your noses where they don't belong." Tunde and Sad didn't wait for her to finish speaking. They turned and ran as fast as they could. "Get back here!" Mama Bola roared, chasing after them. Her heavy footsteps pounded the ground behind them. Despite her size, she was fast. Too fast. The children weaved through the narrow market paths, their legs burning with exhaustion. "I can't run anymore," Sade gasped. "You have to," Tunde urged, grabbing her hand and pulling her along. "We can't let her catch us." Mama Bola was gaining on them. If they didn't find a way to escape, they would be the next ones in her soup. Tunde spotted a small alleyway between two market stalls. "In here!" he shouted, pulling Sade into the dark passage. They crouched behind a pile of empty baskets, trying to catch their breath. Mama Bola stormed past them, looking left and right. "Come out, little ones," she cooed, her voice sickly sweet. "I just want to talk." Tunde clenched his fists. She was lying. If she found them, they were dead. Mama Bola stood still for a moment, then sniffed the air like an animal. "I know you're close," she murmured. Sade gripped Tunde's arm. "We need to do something," she whispered. Tunde's mind raced. They needed to warn the market people. They needed proof, and they needed to stop Mama Bola before she could hurt anyone else. But first, they had to get out alive. Tunde's heart pounded as he and Sad crouched behind the baskets, barely breathing. Mama Bola was close, too close. If she found them, it would be over. Sade nudged him. We have to distract her. But how? Tunde whispered back. Sade looked around and spotted a small wooden crate. Without thinking twice, she picked up a stone and threw it at the crate, making a loud clatter. Mama Bola snapped her head toward the noise. Aha! Got you! She growled, rushing toward the sound. The moment she turned her back, Tunde and Sade dashed out of their hiding spot, running as fast as they could toward the heart of the market. They had to tell someone, anyone, before it was too late. They ran straight to the market square, breathless and sweaty. The traders were beginning to set up their stalls for the morning rush. Tunde wasted no time. He climbed onto a wooden bench and shouted, Listen to me! Everyone, listen! The traders turned, surprised to see him shouting so early in the morning. It's Mama Bola, he continued. She's back, and she's cooking people. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Some people laughed, shaking their heads. What kind of joke is this, boy? One man asked. I swear it's true, Sade added. We saw it with our own eyes. She has a food stall at the edge of the market. That's where all the missing people went. The murmurs grew louder. Some people were still doubtful, but others were beginning to panic. What if they're telling the truth? Someone whispered. Before anyone could say more, a deep, booming voice interrupted them. You children talk too much. Everyone turned to see Mama Bola standing at the entrance of the market. Her scarf was gone, her wild hair spilling over her shoulders. Her eyes burned with fury. The market square fell silent. The traders and customers all turned to look at Mama Bola. Some took a step back. Tunde swallowed hard. It's her! She's the one! Mama Bola chuckled, stepping forward slowly. Me? A killer? A cook of human flesh? She spread her arms. Do I look like a monster to you? Some people shook their heads. These children are liars, she continued. They have always wanted to ruin me. Tunde clenched his fists. Then let's check your stall. Mama Bola stiffened. What? Let's go to your stall, Sade repeated. If you have nothing to hide, let's see what's inside your pots. The crowd murmured in agreement. Yes, let's check. Prove you're innocent. Mama Bola's face twitched. She was trapped. She turned to the crowd and forced a smile. Fine, she said. Let's go. But deep inside, she was already planning her next move. The crowd followed Mama Bola through the market, their eyes locked on her. Tunde and Sade led the way, their hands shaking with nervousness. When they reached the small food stall at the far end, Mama Bola hesitated. Open the pots, Tunde demanded. Mama Bola sighed dramatically. If that will prove my innocence. She lifted the first lid. The scent of spicy soup filled the air. Nothing looked strange. She opened another pot. Boiled yam and palm oil. Some traders began shaking their heads. These children are wasting our time. Tunde felt panic rise in his chest. Check the last one. Mama Bola smirked. Slowly she reached for the final pot, but before she could lift the lid, Sade pushed her aside and yanked it open. The crowd gasped in horror. Floating in the pot was a severed human hand. For a moment, no one moved. Then screams filled the air. Ah! This is witchcraft. Mama Bola is a murderer. The market exploded in chaos. Some people ran in fear. Others grabbed sticks and stones. Mama Bola stepped back, her breathing heavy. I can explain, but no one was listening. Catch her, someone shouted. Mama Bola turned and ran. Tunde and Sade didn't hesitate. They ran after her, along with a mob of furious traders. Mama Bola knocked over baskets, pushed through stalls, but the crowd was too big. She ran toward the river, panting heavily. I won't be caught, she wheezed. But as she reached the riverbank, her foot slipped on the muddy ground. She tumbled forward and landed with a loud splash in the deep, swirling waters. The crowd gasped as she struggled to keep afloat. The current was strong, pulling her under. Help me, she screamed, but no one moved. And then, with one final gurgling sound, she disappeared beneath the surface. The river swallowed her whole. The market was never the same again. The police arrived later that day and confirmed what everyone had feared. Mama Bola had been using human meat in her cooking. The missing people were never found. But the truth was clear. Her food shop was destroyed, her name was erased from the market, and no one spoke of her again. Tunde and Sade became legends. the children who had exposed the wicked food seller, the heroes of the market. But even though Mama Bola was gone, Tunde never forgot her final, desperate scream. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind howled through the market, it almost sounded like her voice, whispering in the darkness. I will be back. Lesson of the story: not every food you see you most buy. Some sellers used strange ingredients to cook. Be careful from whom you buy from. If you enjoy the story, please like, comment, and subscribe for more captivating stories.